Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a quick low elo jungler tier list. We're going to be looking at a bunch of the junglers in the current meta of today and sort of like the gold and below scene. This won't be definitive for every rank. Obviously, there's a few junglers who do a lot better in iron and bronze than they do in gold. And obviously, as a gold and platinum player myself, I can't really give a ton of information about how junglers are played at the higher level of diamond and master and above. So if you're around my level, gold and below, then this might be something useful for you if you're looking to pick up a new jungler and seeing where these guys fall into the pit. Quick disclaimer, I play a lot of jungle, but I have not played every single one of these junglers all the time. I main a good portion of these guys, but I don't have the experience for everyone. So if I rank your favorite jungler a little too low or a little too high than you think, bear with me. It's just from what I've seen playing this game quite a bit. So starting out, I'm going to pick a couple of my favorite junglers for these patches, especially recently. I think Amumu, especially right now, is incredibly strong. The recent buff in, I believe, 9.9 made him just insane. He was already a really nice team fighting jungler just because of how good his CC is. He's easy to play. He clears fairly well. He actually duels people early game with Aftershock. He duels them very well. A lot better than most people expect. So with the buff they gave to him, reducing the cooldown on his Q and increasing his passive damage, in my opinion, it pushed him over the edge, especially in this lower elo area. With Aftershock changes as well, he's just incredibly strong. One of the best junglers right now, in my opinion, especially for if you're trying to carry your team. He's not like a traditional jungler where you can just sort of 1v5 everyone, but he enables your team so well that it's almost not funny. A fantastic jungler right now. Getting this out of the way, I'm a Jax main, so I might as well pick Jax out too. I think Jax is probably B tier right now. The changes to Conquer and Cinderhulk over the past few months and even years have sort of made him actually I'm gonna bump him up to A. I don't think he's excellent right now. I think if you're good at him, you can make him work in most situations, but just because of how strong tanks are getting in these next few patches, and champions like Hecarim and Rek'Sai are still pretty strong, so he's not great. He's a good jungler in a vacuum, but he's not great versus these matchups. I might switch him down to B again later in the video. We'll see. What else? This is a pretty popular one. I think Lee Sin is pretty bad right now. Obviously, a good Lee Sin can still carry a game. Another quick disclaimer, I will say that most of these things are opinions based on people who aren't mains. So obviously, if you have played 800 games with Lee Sin or even 800 games with Nidalee, you'll do a lot better than somebody who hasn't. So I'll rate these in the way that like somebody coming into the champion with only a little bit of experience, like say you only played 10 or 15 games of Lee Sin. This is about where I would rank these champions based on that. There's almost no champion in the game where you can't be able to carry in this low elo if you're really, really good at that champion. So don't complain to me about that, please. Another good champion right now, I think, Skarner. Skarner got a little bit of attention in recent patches with the Spire changes. They expanded how wide they were, and they also took them off the minimap. So it made it a little bit easier for Skarner to make his way around the map without people just pinging exactly where he was. You kind of have to be paying attention now to see where he is. That and just having a suppression that can draw somebody into your team is really powerful. The way I like to play Skarner is I like to play him as like a really powerful pick champion. I go Predator, I go Righteous Glory, I go Deadman's Play, and I just run really fast at somebody and pick out an important target. It doesn't work versus really, really coordinated teams or teams with a lot of self-peel. Like it wasn't very good into Vayne because Vayne can just build a Quicksilver Sash and roll away and get Demi away, but in most solo queue games, this champion's going to be really good at picking people out. We're going to go a little faster because they're actually taking a lot of time on each of these guys. Master Yi, I think he's about B tier right now. With the change this most recent patch and the nerf to Rageblade, they changed his playstyle a little bit. It used to be you were sort of just a on-hit monster, and if you got CC'd, you were dead. Not a lot has changed since then, but they made it so that instead of building on-hit, you sort of go a crit build now. It's a little difficult to say exactly where he is right now. It's just because things are sort of shifting for him. We're seeing a lot of IE build on him, even like an Essence Reaver. Wit's End is still a good item on him, so not ideal just because he is easy to get shut down. But again, if you're good at Mastery, you should be able to carry fairly easily. Another champion I play a lot of, Warwick. I think Warwick is a little slept on right now. He's really good at dueling. He's one of the best early game duelists. He will beat every jungler here except for maybe Jax in a 1v1 at level 3. So just an excellent duelist. He doesn't scale fantastically into the late game, but with the addition of Wit's End into his build, he can still do a lot of damage and still kill squishies fairly easily while staying healthy and being fairly beefy with a Dead Man's Plate and a Cinder Hulk and a Titanic Hydra. So pretty good jungler right now, in my opinion. Not ideal, but definitely really easy to play as well. So that's always a good factor. Camille, I'm going to put her in the D tier. Pretty hard to make work. Her clear is still pretty bad considering that her E doesn't stun champions anymore or monsters anymore. Level 2 ganks were kind of buffed with the changes to scuttles, but overall, if you aren't like very familiar with how Camille works and how her pathing should work, I wouldn't pick her up because she's just not very good at the moment. Same thing with Fiddlesticks. Not on the same level of Camille, but it's just not a super easy jungler to just pick up and go. It requires a lot of positional advantages. It requires a lot of like odd gank paths because of his ult. You can make use of some really interesting pathways to make things work. But he's so weak into junglers that duel well. Anything that can interrupt his drain just makes him awful. And a lot of the good junglers right now have multiple ways to interrupt his drain, so just feels a little bad to use. Notice I have this cheesy tier right down here. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm going to be placing champions that I think they're really, really bad unless you can cheese people. For an example, I'll just give, I think Shaco is a cheesy jungler. He's really easy to outplay if you know what you're doing, but it's pretty much a standard at this point. If you have a Shaco in your game that will just is on another level, they have like 8 million mastery points on Shaco. He will just stomp all over every jungler in the game and he'll just run over people. So I'll put him in the cheesy level where this isn't below D, by the way. This is just where I have this. I think that cheesy is kind of just in its tier on its own where you aren't really bad, but you're not really good. It's just very situational. So don't rate cheesy bad. That's just cheesy. So Karthus, I think it's either A or S. I think Karthus is a different type of jungler than most. He's insanely powerful, especially after the Relic or the Runic Echoes buff. The sort of a lot of his power just comes to the fact that no matter what happens in a team fight, you'll get your ult off, and it will do half the health of every champion in the game if they're below 3k HP. A lot of Karthus's power comes from just power farming the jungle, getting nice ults off. It's sort of like a ganking jungler that doesn't have to be near you to gank. Similar to like a Gangplank or something like that. So it's kind of hard to rate him because he's so different than most of these other junglers, but I think he's really strong right now, especially because of his global ult. And don't count him out. He's one of those junglers where once you get his playstyle down, you just power farm, take objectives, and then ult and kill people really easily. Hecarim. This is difficult. I've never been a huge fan of Hecarim. I'm going to put him in B tier. A lot of people think Hecarim's really insane right now, even after the nerfs to his Q and Conquer. I think Hecarim's a little overrated, especially in this lower elo. Maybe in the higher elo, when people can use him to a little bit more of an advantage, he is a lot better. But I just feel like he's so squishy. Even with a tanky era build, he just doesn't really compare to a lot of the higher tier junglers, in my opinion. It's one of those things where I fully expect to be argued with, and people will say, well, obviously Hecarim's S tier. you just haven't seen any good Heckrooms, and that might be true, but I haven't seen any good Heckrooms, so what am I going to do? Same with Kane. Actually, I think Kane... Kane's B tier. Blue Kane's probably C tier, but Red Kane is pretty good, so B tier. Kane's one of those champions where if he can get going and get his form before 10 minutes, he can be really strong and just snowball a game, especially red form. Red form is so frustrating for so many of these champions to deal with because it just heals so much. It's sort of similar to Warwick, where if you don't kill him, he will never die, which sounds silly, but it's really hard to kill Red Kane, so I'm going to just put him in B tier. He's probably closer to A in red form, but blue form's just kind of bad, so we'll split the difference. Silas. I think Silas is really bad. After the Aftershock nerf for non-tanks, I don't think he's viable at all. I think that his clear is okay. His heal not working on monsters makes it a lot worse. His ganks are pretty good actually, but it's really hard to get there. He's similar to Kane, where his early game is just so bad compared to most of these other junglers that I don't think that he can really come out of it. He might be C tier, but we'll leave him in D for now. He's pretty bad. Nasus, probably D tier as well. I wanted to put him in cheesy because it is sort of a cheese jungle where you just kind of stack up for 18 minutes and get 500, 600 stacks and just one-shot people. But he's so kiteable. He's so easy to invade. His clear speed is pretty bad early, especially because you kind of want to run around and sort of pick up stacks. So just kind of bad. Not a good jungler. Olaf, probably C tier. His ganks are actually pretty good, and he's always been an outlier of a champion just because he has that ultimate where you can't CC him. So if you get ahead, you're unstoppable and you're going to be able to kill that AD carry no matter what. But he's pretty easy to duel early. He doesn't do a lot in a gank because his only CC is basically his axe. So he's kind of just like a damage gank. So unless you have really good setup in your lanes, it's pretty hard to make him work. So not a lot more to say about that. He's just one of those champions where he can do good work, but it's, I don't know. I'm going to put Ivern in cheesy. I don't think Ivern's actually bad at all, but I think that he's so situational that it'd be unfair to put him in any of these tiers. He's a really good counter jungler. He can help support your carries really hard. He's basically a second support for your Kog'Maw or your Vayne or whatever ADC you want to have. Really good at keeping those champions alive. Really easy to play. Not really easy to play, but really easy to use your shield effectively. A lot of the higher skill level comes from counter jungling the enemy jungler and counter ganking with Daisy and your Q. So hard to rate where he is. I think I'll just leave him in cheesy. Rek'Sai, I believe, is still A tier. She received a pretty big nerf a couple patches ago, as well as got hit by the Conqueror nerf. So I think she's still a little stronger than Hecarim just because of how powerful her clear is and how well she's able to traverse the map. Her ult is a little bit better for single target damage, so not quite the amount of CC that Hecarim has, but if you're good at Rek'Sai and you can use the W positional awareness where you can see enemies' locations to your advantage, I think that gives her a little extra beta push where Hecarim doesn't quite have that. J4 got hit with a nerf in the last patch, and it wasn't a huge nerf. I think it was a small nerf to his E and a small shield nerf to his W. But with the advent of tanky junglers becoming more and more popular, J4 falls off more and more just because he doesn't really do that well into tanks. He was more of a bursty bully to a lot of the squishier junglers, so he could come in and one-shot somebody like a Kane or something, or Kindred or Kha'Zix or something like that. But now we're seeing those junglers kind of fall off, and we don't see them a lot, and he doesn't do very well into the tankier junglers. So B tier, maybe even C tier, but we'll leave him there for now. Sejuani is a champion that actually has received a lot of buffs recently, indirect and direct. I think she's really good. People are sleeping on Sejuani because she got hit with that nerf bat so hard last year that she sort of never recovered. But with the buffs to Cinderhulk the buffs to Aftershock, the buffs to her W, the damage buffs to her E and her ult. She has received like 8 or 9 direct and indirect buffs in a row for the past few patches. Really powerful tank. She can actually do a lot of the squishier junglers too, which is insane. Her clear is pretty good. She goes Cinder Hulk, so pretty good. Tries Sejuani out. She's really fun to play. She's sort of like a Mumu where you can enable a lot of good team fights. I don't think she's quite on the level of a Mumu, but pretty good jungler. Zac. I think Zac's C. Sort of like Sejuani, where he did receive a lot of good buffs because of Cinderhulk and Aftershock getting buffed, but until the changes go through in the next patch, I believe, where they revert his ult and his W. No, this is without the new ult. This is pre-ult change. So when they change his ult, I expect him to go up to B and maybe even A. But pre-ult change, I think Zac is still C. And then once that change goes through, expect him to jump up a couple tiers, maybe even to S if he's good. I don't know. I'll have to play around with him. Kindred, put her in cheesy. She's kind of like Shaco, where you kind of just want to invade a lot and get your marks. If you can get 4 marks any time before like 15 minutes, you're insanely strong. You do a ton of damage. You'll 1v1 almost any jungler in the game. So keep an eye out for Kindred. Pretty hard to play, but once you master her, she can just destroy people. Also, a really good situational pick into dive comps. Kind of like a big Taric ult or a big Bard ult. Using it to deny something like even a Karthus ult can be really powerful. So keep an eye out for Kindred. She can be used to counter a lot of these meta junglers really well. So just look out for that. Trundle's not bad. His E is actually a really powerful ganking tool. His clear is a little slow. Chomp helps out a bit when working on single target camps, but where he struggles a lot is dealing with camps like Raptors and Krugs, like a lot of junglers do because they don't have AoE. So little weak in the early game. His E is obviously very powerful. Using your E to push a target back into your team is probably one of the most powerful ganking tools pre-level 6 for any of these junglers. It's pretty similar to like a Zac coming in and knocking people up. So using Trundle Pillar effectively can be really powerful. He also is a really good duelist just because of a Q and W, giving him great dueling potential. And then his ult is also a nice counter to tank junglers. So expect to see Trundle a little bit more, especially if tank junglers pop off. He's always been kind of a counter to Sejuani because of how her passive works. So just because he's C, don't count him out. He can be used to counter a lot of these tankier junglers, and he's still pretty decent. Wukong, D tier. He's almost cheesy, but I think he's pretty bad. His clear is pretty god awful. His ganks are kind of cheesy, where you kind of just clone in and try to get an E ult off, but that pretty much relies on having your ult up, which is it is on a long cooldown, and you don't have a lot of dueling potential outside of that, so pretty bad. Rammus, I think, is either A or B right now. I think Rammus is really good. Again, Aftershock and Cinderhulk, really powerful. Rammus is sort of just a counter pick to a lot of these on-hit junglers that you see, a lot of auto-attacking junglers. He's really good against Jax. He's really good against Master Yi. He's probably even pretty good against Kindred and Shaco. Just a really nice, beefy jungler that has the capability of shutting down a lot of these auto-attack champions. A good counter pick to something like Vayne, or not Vayne, but just something that auto-attacks a lot. Also, he has sort of a Hecarim ability where he can show up in a lane really quickly before the jungler or the top laner can even react. So he works really well against people who ward well, because he can sort of just dodge wards by just running right past them at supersonic speed. So pretty good jungler. He probably closer to B than A, but just because how strong I think tank junglers are right now, I think it's safe to put him in A. Gragas, I actually don't see a ton of Gragas right now. I think he's probably C. The Runic Echoes buff that just happened might have pushed him up to B, but just because I haven't seen him, and just because of how situational he is, like a bad Gragas ult can mess up your fight really bad, and a good Gragas ult can be really good. I think it's not really worth putting him in B. He's sort of a sleeper jungler. I think he's weak until he isn't. So maybe we'll see him pop up every now and then and kill people, but I wouldn't be too certain. He's sort of just bad right now. Elise, Runic Echoes and buff and the Talisman change were really good for her. Good Elises are easily S tier, but most Elises are going to fall around B tier. She has a really nice burst. She can deal with tank junglers decently because of her percent health damage. Her E is really one of the best CC tools in the game. It's like a 2.5 second stun or something like that. It's a little difficult to land in hairy situations, but really easy to land on people chasing you, so pretty good jungler. She requires a lot more skill than most of these guys, though, so that's why I rate her a little bit lower. Same with Graves. I think Graves is pretty similar to Elise right now, where they're both heavily skill dependent. Graves has received a little bit of love over the last few patches. The change to Stormrazor and Crit kind of messed with his build. Previously, you saw him go, I think, Stormrazor, Phantom Dancer, Black Cleaver a lot of the times. Whereas I think a lot of Graves these days are going like IE, Maul. I don't even know what Graves are building these days, actually. Black Cleaver's still in there, I'm pretty sure, but not bad. It just requires a lot of skill, and there's so many places Graves can go wrong that I don't think that it's worth rating him any higher than a B, because like he can be really, really good just because any champion with that much mobility and that much kiting potential can be really, really good, but most of the time he's not, so we'll rate him at B. Same with Shyvana. I think Shyvana is pretty similar too. She has a lot of the same problems that I was going to compare her to somebody, but I forget who it was. She has a lot of problems sticking to targets, and that's why you see a lot of people even going that weird AP build. If you've seen the Shyvana recently, you've probably seen her go AP, where they just go for some sort of like E-Max nuke bomb with Dragon Form, and that can work really well. It's kind of cheesy, but it's not that cheesy, so I'll leave it in B tier. Not a lot of people are going the old on-hit AD Shyvana build anymore, so kind of hard to quantify where she belongs. Pantheon C tier. He's pretty cheesy, so I kind of want him in the cheesy tier, but he's not very good. He falls off so hard late game. There is very few junglers on this list that fall off harder than Pantheon late game, except maybe Udyr, and even Udyr has uses. So Pantheon's basically a stun bot. You run in, you gank at level 3, you stun, you do a butt ton of damage because you have a point and click Q on a 2-second cooldown, and you have really strong dueling potential because blocking an auto attack every few seconds is insane early game because most of these junglers just want to auto attack you. So really, really powerful early game, and then falls off super hard mid to late game. He can be used to secure objectives really well because he has a pseudo teleport on his ult, so there's always an upside for him, but not very good. Same with Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix and Pantheon are very similar. Kha'Zix not quite as strong in that early game. He does ramp up more into the mid game, and then in the late game he has sort of the same problem as Pantheon, where he just kind of doesn't do anything because he gets one shot by any single other champion in the game that has any amount of damage. Really easy to CC. You have to use your ult invisibility really well to get any sort of flank off, and even then it's very likely that you're going to die and not even kill the AD carry because he has GA and a Janna shooting him or something like that. So pretty bad. Clear, not very good either, just to say that. And Kha'Zix's blood brother, or blood rival, Rengar. Same situation. I think Rengar's a little easier to execute just because not really as many abilities. You kind of just max Q. Rengar does have the ability to dodge CC. Not dodge it, but break out of CC with an empowered W. Pretty strong. Useful in the right hands. But in most people's hands, he's not very good. He's one of those champions where if he gets out of control, he's going to just take over a game. So keep an eye out for that. But really easy to not let him get out of control. Just don't int. Vi. I think Vi's pretty good right now. There's a lot of different builds going on for Vi. You have the Aftershock build, which I don't think is quite as good anymore. Since the change, you have the Electrocute build, which has always been sort of viable. You have the Hail of Blades build, which is just kind of fun. I think there's even a Conqueror build going around. I'm not sure about that one though. There's just so many good builds for Vi. She's beefy. She has really good CC. Her engage is great. Her ganks are fine. Her clear is good. She can take objectives really quickly because of her passive change that just got changed. She's pretty safe. She has a point and click CC, which works almost every single time. So really, really good in low elo, especially. Udyr is actually, I believe, the highest win rate jungler in the game right now. I don't know if he's that good. I put him in A tier. I think Udyr is pretty similar to something like Jax or Master Yi. You sort of just want to bully the enemy jungler, get out of control, take as many objectives as possible, and just run around the map really fast, Trick 2G style. You're just going to be doing a lot of damage and taking a lot of objectives. He falls off super hard when team fights start happening. You have a really hard time walking into anything. You're not like tanky enough to where you can survive like running at somebody, and you're really, really easy to kite. So probably A tier. That's a little generous, but I don't think he's quite bad enough to go into the B tier. B tier, Volibear. Volibear has received a little bit of love recently with all the Cinderhulk and Aftershock changes. He's a really good duelist. He has decent clear, but he just sort of struggles with the same problem as Udyr, where it's really, really hard to get into a fight if the enemy team has any form of CC. Pretty easy to kite. He is really beefy with his passive, and his ult can do a lot of damage, so don't count him out, but I think that is just so binary that it's really hard to get anything done, especially if people have your number. Nunu, almost S tier. I think because of the crab changes, he got knocked down to A tier, so not quite on top as it used to be. Pretty cheesy. His heal early game can catch a lot of people off guard. It's like basically a smite heal, but on a 10-second cooldown. He can do a lot of damage really quickly. He takes objectives like nobody's business. He can take a dragon and like that. He can take even a Rift Herald pretty quickly. So really good for objective-minded junglers. His ganks are really powerful because of the biggest snowball ever. It's similar to how Hecarim and Rammus work. So keep an eye out for him. Really powerful. Not very hard to play either. So nice pickup jungler if you're looking to get into the role. Xin Zhao. Ugh. I don't know, man. Xin Zhao is fun. I think he's B tier or C tier. I'm gonna put him in C tier. Xin Zhao's a lot of fun to play. He's very powerful with his He's very powerful with his W and his E. He's really good at sticking to targets. He can separate a team really well with his ult, but he's pretty squishy. A lot of his capabilities rely on not getting CC'd when you engage on somebody. And I just don't think that the meta suits him very well right now. Not great into tanks either, which is why he's probably not B tier, because I think tanks are getting a lot stronger now, and bruisers especially. So just not great at the moment. Not terrible though. Echo's probably around B tier, a little closer to C, but what are you gonna do? Maybe I should have made another tier. Oh well. This is okay. He's really bursty. His ganks are decent if you can land a really good W. His W is a really powerful zoning tool. Really easy to survive in ganks if you're tower diving. He's an excellent tower diver just because of his ultimate. He takes objectives fairly well because of his passive. The only thing I think he struggles with is I think late game he struggles with getting on top of targets a little bit. His only gap closer is his E, and then when he uses his E, he's kind of sort of stranded in the area, and you kind of rely on using your ult to get out. So a little weak in that regard. Not bad into tanks, especially tanks like Sejuani, where you can kind of just all in them and then get out and have them to be too low to do anything, but not fantastic either, so keep her there. Nidalee, she's basically cheese, but I don't think she's that good. I'm gonna just put her in D tier. Sort of similar to how Shaco and Kindred work, where if you know what you're doing on Nidalee, you can really do a lot of damage really quickly, but so squishy, and a lot of her damage revolves around jumping in after you land a spear, and that just puts you in a lot of danger. Whereas, like, why would you play Nidalee when you could play somebody like Echo or somebody like Warwick or somebody like Jax or something like this. I don't know. It's very, very powerful jungler in the right hands, but pretty weak. Same with Talia. Talia jungle had this moment in the sun where it was just really, really strong. But ever since the change, let me look up the Talia numbers real quick. I don't think people actually are playing her much in the jungle anymore. Okay, she has a 0.5% play rate, so she's going to play a little bit in the jungle, but I don't think it's that much. She might be good, but I just haven't seen a ton of good Talias anymore. So I'm going to put her in D tier. Cheese, the king of cheese, Twitch. This is the cheese jungler right now. Really, really strong if you can get ahead. Level 2 ganks like nobody's business. You can roam. It's basically Evelyn right down here, but Evelyn pre-change where she could be invisible all the time. So really powerful coming in behind. Can throw a lot of people off guard, especially at the very low elos. If you're in iron or bronze and you can play Twitch well, you're just going to run over people so well because he can just get behind anybody in the game without being spotted because who buys pink wards in iron and bronze? So I don't want to put him on the tier list because like very easy to shut him down. He's super weak to invades. He's super weak to engage and that kind of thing. And proper warding can shut him down really hard. So put him in the cheese. Pretty bad, but pretty fun. Nocturne, B tier. He's actually pretty similar to Xin Zhao right now, where he has a lot of powerful tools at his disposal. I just don't think the meta is really suited for him right now. Ganking with 6 is really strong, and he can burst people really easily, but it doesn't really seem like he's that prevalent. I don't see him a lot, and whenever I do see him, he's pretty weak, so we'll leave him in B for now. Same with Evelyn. I think Evelyn and Nocturne are good comparisons where they just have some really powerful tools at their disposal. I think Evelyn is close to A tier with this runic change, but I don't know. Maybe she's A tier. No, I'm gonna leave her in B tier. The Runic Echoes buff was really good for a lot of these AP junglers, but I don't know if it was quite enough to push Evelyn up to the A tier. Really powerful, and this is like a good curve to have anyway. You want a lot of your junglers to be sort of middle of the pack and not just a lot of them being really bad or really, really good. So, yeah, not a lot to say about Evelyn. She's really powerful if she can just burst down the ADC or the mid lane. Really good at ganking post 6 because pink wards, sort of similar to Twitch, but not insane. Nico, really bad. I don't think anyone jungles with her right now. A lot of people play her mid, a lot of people play her support. The AD build got gutted with the Rageblade nerf, so I don't think people go that anymore. Don't think people jungle with her at all, so D tier. Diana, B tier. Probably closer to C, but I think the Runic Echoes change, like I said, with most of the other AP junglers, made a pretty big deal for her. She doesn't gank a lot pre-6 because her only ganking tools are basically her E. But once you get to 6, you do a lot of damage. Your clear is fairly good because of how your passive works, or get passive. Your damage is insane. She can burst any squishy down really quickly. She scales really well into the late game. The only thing that she falls off is like she has a lot. If she doesn't kill a target, she doesn't offer a lot to the team. So really bad from behind. Can be easy to shut down with a proper beefy front line. Like try getting to the Kog'Maw or the Vayne when you have something like a Mumu sitting on top of you, or even like a Scion or something. So hard to get to the back line if you're not ahead, and hard to use from behind. So that's where I rate her right now. This was just a pretty brief overview of all the junglers. I think this is all the junglers. I didn't make this tier list site, so if I missed anything, let me know. I know Brand Jungle has been sort of being toyed with right now after the buff. I'd probably rate him around cheesy or C. So if you're questioning about that, give him a try. He's pretty fun. Not great, but not terrible. Not as bad as you'd think. If I missed any other junglers, let me know in the comments. I'll be uploading this to my YouTube channel. And I'll try to give like a quick reading there if I missed them. But I think that's pretty much everyone. So If you have anyone that you think I wildly miscategorized, feel free to berate me on YouTube or on Twitter or in my Discord. Check out my Discord, discord.gg/Nighthawk. Here we are right here. We're talking about this tier list right now. Pinone's mad that I didn't include Maokai. Maokai D tier, really bad. Maybe C actually. Other than that, thanks for watching the video. I'm going to be uploading. I'm trying to do a video every day, but it's probably not going to stay that way. So a video, at least 2 or 3 videos a week is going to be my goal. So keep an eye out for that. A lot of fun, a lot of good stuff coming to this channel in the future. So do the thing, like, bell, subscribe, pet your dog, buy a cat, enjoy your day.